So I would say it's not a case that, premium bonds are useless, never use them. But you have to look quite carefully at your own individual circumstances, your own timeline, and then figure out, actually, is this the best place?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Personal Investor Podcast. I'm Ed Monk, and I'm joined today by Fidelity's Jemma Slingo to talk about premium bonds. They are the most popular way for people to save money in the UK, with 22 million people holding them. But do they deserve that popularity? And how do they stack up against other potential homes for your savings? Before that, let me remind you that if you find this video useful or interesting, to please subscribe to the channel. Give us a like or leave a comment if you want. And once you've subscribed, remember to hit that bell icon at the top of the page to turn on all notifications to make sure you get new content as soon as it is released. That all said, Jemma, welcome along. How are you?
I'm very well.
Good. Now, I mentioned there that premium bonds are the most popular way to save money in the UK. There seems to be this affection for premium bonds that just isn't shared by any other alternative sort of options. Certainly not savings accounts, definitely not investment ISAs. Why do you think that is?
So I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've decided I think it's the thrill element. So for people who don't know, when you buy a premium bond, you're essentially entered into a prize draw. And every month, different prizes are picked out, but you can win up to £1 million. And I think it's the thought of, well, you could become a millionaire that really lures people in. And, I used to own a lot of premium bonds. I had to sell them because I was buying a flat, and I still miss the buzz it delivers. So I think that sort of dopamine hit isn't provided by something like an ISA or a savings account.
Yeah.
I think also, sort of on the flip side of that, you have the fact that they're extremely safe. So they're backed by the government. So unless something absolutely cataclysmic happens, you're not going to lose your money. Mm-hmm. So you have the thought, well, I could win lots of money, but I'm definitely not going to see my pot suddenly plunge. And then to top it all off, the winnings are tax-free. So you don't have to worry about tax either.
Yeah, and all this is relevant to the conversation we're going to have today. We're going to get into some of those points. I think with to talk about the safety point, I think, yes, they're safe, backed by the government, and that's nice. I also think that some of the alternatives have a bit of reputational damage. Banks weren't the most popular for a while there. Investments, not really in the same boat, but there's sort of more technical, requires a bit more kind of know-how. Premium bonds are the thing that people feel are sort of friendly and cuddly, right?
Yes,
exactly.
I would say so.
Okay, so let's get into the detail of how they work. What's the basic offering with premium bonds, and how is that different from a regular cash savings account that people will be familiar with?
So as I said, when you buy a premium bond, you enter a prize draw, and every month prizes are selected and you can win between £25 and £1 million. And NS&I, which is the state-backed savings provider, every year publishes an annual prize fund rate. Mm-hmm. So at the moment, that's 3.6%. And that gives a sense of the return that you could get if you buy some premium bonds. But crucially, it's not a guaranteed rate. It's just an average of what you can expect. So it's a very different situation to, for example, if you opened a cash ISA and was like, I'll lock my money away for a year. I know exactly how much I'll be getting at the end of that year. Yeah. We're just instead looking at an average rate that you could expect.
You have to buy them in £25. That's what a bond is. It's £25, right? That's one premium bond. And they have a big, long kind of serial number, don't they, attached to them? And that's basically pulled out. It's a machine, isn't it? It's called Ernie. The machine, another sort of soft and cuddly sort of element to them. Okay, and because they work differently, they work in this way that you described there, direct comparisons are quite difficult. You've mentioned a prize fund rate, not quite the same as an interest rate on a bank account. So what can we say about the levels of returns that people should expect from premium bonds?
So I think the key thing to flag is that while premium bonds look really simple, and that's a big reason why people like them, they're actually really, really fiddly as a product because it's very difficult to look at how much money you have and know exactly what sort of return you can expect. Martin Lewis, money saving expert, has done loads and loads of work on this. And he has basically come to the conclusion that with average luck, most people actually get less than the headline prize fund rate. And it's almost impossible for a normal person sitting at home to estimate exactly what they can expect. He's actually built an online calculator where you can plug in how much you've got saved and it will sort of spit out a winnings number that you might expect, which is quite useful.
Yeah.
But basically, it's just really, really hard to know exactly what return you're going to get,
Yeah.
which makes it really hard to compare to something like a cash ISA where you've got that certainty.
Yeah. And of course, underlying everything is the fact that it's a prize draw. You might have good luck or bad luck. That's going to determine your kind of return overall. And as you say, the maths are really, really complicated. I don't pretend to understand them, but the sort of received wisdom seemed to be that you needed a certain number of premium bonds in order to sort of give yourself a chance of getting that sort of average return. And it was more likely to happen, basically, the larger amount you held in premium bonds.
Yes, but then I think it's human nature to latch on to the times when that didn't happen. So I was having a look on the website and it was saying last year someone who held £100 of premium bonds won the £1 million prize. And you're sitting at home thinking, well, that could be me. But of course, a lot of people won't have amazing luck. Some people will have bad luck. You could have money invested and win absolutely nothing. So it's a funny one, the way it plays with human psychology, I think.
And there's conspiracy theories on there. One of them is that the draw favours bonds that are bought recently. You see this all the time, and NS&I deny this, don't they?
It is unproven.
It's unproven. And I was actually thinking about that, and I don't know, is there something to say, is it just likely that more bonds are bought more recently and the winnings will crowd around the more? I don't know. But now, you actually did some work recently, didn't you, to put this annual prize rate to the test. What did you find out about the recent returns on premium bonds, and how did that compare to more conventional types of savings?
I did. So basically, I wanted to avoid all the knotty issues around individual luck. So if you or I had invested in premium bonds, what we would have got. I thought instead I would look across the UK in aggregate how many prizes premium bonds paid out and the size of those prizes. So I went back to 2025 and saw that total winnings were about £5 billion. And that came from holdings of roughly £130 billion. So I then set myself an exercise. I thought, well, what if that £130 billion had all been put somewhere else? It was all taken out of premium bonds and put in different types of savings vehicles. So I was thinking cash ISAs, cash funds, and then slightly more adventurous options as well. And I just ran the numbers to see how they all compared.
Okay, so how did it compare, say, to cash savings?
So if we start with an easy access cash ISA, I thought, well, let's look at what the average rate that was available in 2025. If all the money had been shifted from premium bonds into that average easy access cash ISA, they actually would have done worse. You would have been better off sticking with the premium bonds in aggregate.
Versus the average return from cash ISAs.
Yes, well, the average cash ISA. But then I thought, well, what if people had shopped around and found the best rate available?
Yes.
And if they had done, then the cash ISA comes out quite significantly on top.
Okay. It's interesting this. I was looking at your numbers and working out the sort of percentage return last year from premium bonds. It's very, very close to the prize rate from what I can see. The prize rate rose and it was actually higher and kind of fell through last year as far as I could see. So it seemed to come out about right. But as you say, the best cash accounts would probably give you a better return than premium bonds.
In aggregate. Not as an individual necessarily.
In aggregate. Okay, so let's take the comparison a step further and look at the world of investing. Now, there's lots of guardrails we need to put up here around making these comparisons. But there's also safer versions of investing and more risky versions of investing. So what do we need to say here?
So we had a look at what are called money market funds, sometimes called cash funds. And these are a type of investment. So in theory, they can go down as well as up. So you're taking on more risk than, for example, with a premium bond. But often cash funds are used as a low risk place for cash. They sort of replicate what a savings account could do, sometimes with slightly better returns.
Yes.
So we thought, well, let's have a look at what would have happened if we'd taken that £130 billion and put it all in a cash fund instead. And it turns out the cash fund would have come out on top. for those 5 billion winnings that you got from premium bonds, you would have had about an extra £700 million from a cash fund.
Yeah, and just the point on the cash funds, if you look at the history of them, they basically don't lose money, although it is possible for periods, because you'd normally have some sort of charge to use them, an investment charge, maybe a platform charge to do that. You can technically lose money on them, but they're very, very, very safe. They're at the safest end of the investment kind of spectrum. So what about the less safe end of things? What, for example, would have happened had you compared it to the stock market?
I will cushion this in that it is very difficult to compare premium bonds with stock market returns, because ultimately you're using them for very different reasons, really. When you're thinking about investing in the stock market, you're thinking long term, 5 years or more, whereas premium bonds you can hold for as long as you like. They're very safe. But it did occur to us that actually often premium bonds are used as a form of investment. So, for example, if you're a grandparent, just got a new grandchild, you might buy some premium bonds thinking, well, they're not going to use them for another 20 years. So it sort of made sense to us to think about comparing the two. Last year was a very good year for the stock market. So a global tracker fund, for example, would have massively outperformed premium bonds. Yeah. Obviously, it could have been a very bad year for the stock market and the picture would have looked very different. But the general takeaway is that over the long term, stock market returns are far more likely to grow and stay ahead of inflation than something like a premium bond. Over
the long term, with the risk that they can fall in the short term, all they are fundamentally different. But as you say, the way premium bonds are often used, actually, that money is quite a good candidate potentially for something like the stock market, because it tends to be there for the long term.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll finish off, Jemma, with some conclusions. The promise we're making today in this conversation is that we're going to tell people where premium bonds make sense and where they don't make sense, and whether that is sort of at odds with the kind of public image of premium bonds. So what would you say?
People are very divided on premium bonds, but I would say often they can be a good place for your money. So the numbers we've run have shown that last year, maybe you would want to hold premium bonds compared to something like a cash ISA. But if you're willing to put in the time, do your research, look around at the best rates available, maybe there is more money to be made somewhere else.
Yeah.
You're also thinking, well, if I'm looking at the long term, I probably don't want to be holding my money in premium bonds. I'll probably want to be putting it to work and investing it. There's also a question of tax. So in this whole discussion, we have assumed that all that money that was in premium bonds could be sheltered in some sort of ISA, which means you wouldn't be paying tax on it. It could grow tax-free. But some people use premium bonds because they've already maxed out their ISAs.
Yes.
And it's a way to shelter even more of their savings from tax. And for those people, it can be really sensible. It's a very tax efficient way to save. So I would say it's not a case that, premium bonds are useless, never use them. But you have to look quite carefully at your own individual circumstances, your own timeline, and then figure out, actually, is this the best place?
Yeah, and I think what I would say here is that, the image of a sort of safe place for small amounts sort of given, between family members, often to children, that isn't a very good use, or premium bonds aren't a very good place for that money, because if you're really putting it aside for the long term, as you said, investments can be a better home for that money. And sort of conversely, where they make sense is actually for people that have quite have a lot of money basically, and who have used their ISA allowances elsewhere. I was looking at rates and trying to do some comparisons. Pretty much, if you couldn't shelter money in an ISA and you wanted to hold it in cash, which lots of people want to do because it makes sense to have a cash buffer all the time for even if you are investing as well, those people, it actually really does make sense because the returns are completely tax-free. They're likely to have the higher amounts that we've said mean you're more likely to get the average rate. And it's almost like a sort of extra amount of tax-free allowance you can have within your finances.
I think so. And also, we haven't touched on this really, but people like talking about premium bonds. Like, we're here
Yeah, it's
today
weird.
chatting
Yeah.
about it. I have like weird group chats with people I never usually interact with, being like, oh, just won £25.
Yeah, you get a text message, don't you? If people don't know, if you have an account with NS&I and they have your mobile and they're sort of on the 1st or 2nd of the month or something, you get, if you're lucky, you'll get a text, and it's a very exciting moment.
Exactly. And it's a way of introducing people who otherwise wouldn't be interested sort of tentatively into the world of investing and getting them talking about finances, which in my opinion is a good thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You know, it's our day job really to kind of get people interested in their money and sort of making themselves more financially secure by making kind of sensible decisions. But it can be hard. It can be hard to get people enthusiastic about it. But, you know, premium bonds, for whatever reason, have really managed to capture the imagination of lots of people. And I think it's that point, isn't it? Just to round this all off, it's a bit of a daydream, basically. We can say what we want about returns and 0.x% or whatever. It's the excitement, the possibility that you might win £1 million.
I think so, yes.
That's it. Okay. All right. I will just remind you all that if you found this useful or interesting, to please subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon to get notified as soon as new content is released. Give us a like or share the episodes. It really does help other people find what we're doing here. That all said, Jemma, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.